Welcome to HD Rare Coins, your ultimate source for rare coins, fascinating history, and the thrill of discovery. From legendary pennies to hidden gems, we explore the world of numismatics one amazing coin at a time. In the waning months of the 20th century's final decade, Great Britain stood at a crossroads of tradition and transformation. The year was 1990, a time of shifting politics, economic recalibration, and a country cautiously stepping into a new era. Margaret Thatcher, the Iron Lady who had dominated British politics for over a decade, resigned that November, passing the torch to John Major. Meanwhile, Europe was reshaping itself with the fall of the Berlin Wall still echoing through headlines, and the dawn of a single European market loomed on the horizon. In homes, the crackle of analog televisions still filled living rooms, and a pound coin felt weighty in the palm. Among the rattling change in countless pockets and tills, one small yet elegant coin found its way into circulation, modest in appearance, yet destined to captivate the world decades later. The 1990 UK 20p piece stood at first glance, it was unassuming. Just another part of the decimal currency system introduced in the early 1970s, when Britain transitioned from the old pounds, shillings, and pence to a more simplified monetary structure. But for collectors and historians alike, the 20p coin held unique allure. Introduced relatively recently in 1982, it had become one of the most distinctive and recognizable denominations in British coinage, due to both its seven-sided heptagonal shape and the striking blend of classical and modern elements in its design. The 1990 issue, though outwardly no different from other years, bore a quiet mystique that only deepened with time. Minted at the Royal Mint in Llantrisant, South Wales, this particular year marked a turning point not in design, but in rarity, quality, and the strange fate of a few exceptional coins that somehow surpassed all expectations. To understand the mystique of the 1990 20p coin, one must first understand the artistry behind it. The obverse featured the regal profile of Queen Elizabeth II, by then, a fixture of British coinage and an enduring symbol of continuity in a rapidly changing world. This portrait was the third official effigy, sculpted by Raphael Maclaf and used from 1985 through 1997. In it, the Queen is crowned with the George IV state diadem, her gaze poised and confident, her features softened by age yet retaining unmistakable dignity. Surrounding her image, in dignified Latin script, Elizabeth II DG Reg. FD, affirming her divine right and role as defender of the faith, flip the coin, and the reverse design is immediately distinct. Created by artist William Gardner, it bears the crowned Tudor rose, a symbol deeply woven into England's heritage. The rose, elegant, layered, stylized, is a nod to the ancient royal house and the wars that once divided the realm. Encircling it are the words, 20p, and the numerals, 1990, set subtly below, positioned with care in the design's lower arc. The sharp lines of the lettering contrast with the gentle curves of the rose, creating a harmony that speaks to centuries of British coin artistry, but no design, however beautiful, can account for what makes certain coins valuable. For that, we must peer into the secrets of the mint itself, and the silent anomalies that slip through even the most rigorous processes. In 1990, the Royal Mint produced a standard number of 20p coins for circulation. They were struck in cupronickel, an alloy of copper and nickel that provided strength, durability, and a bright silvery finish. Millions were made. Yet as the years passed, numismatists began to notice that finding a flawless example from this year was strangely difficult. Coins from this era were workhorses. They clinked in coat pockets, scraped across shop counters, and jostled in cash registers across the country. Their surfaces dulled, scratched, worn by a million small acts of commerce. Most were ordinary. But then came whispers, of a few 1990 20p pieces that seemed different. Sharper. Shinier. Near perfect. Coins that had somehow escaped the ravages of circulation, or perhaps had never been released to the public at all. Collectors began to investigate. What they found was remarkable. A small number of 1,990 20p coins showed signs of having been struck with extraordinary clarity, proof-like fields, razor-sharp details, luster so brilliant it seemed to dance beneath light. Some featured minute die variations, doubled letters, ghostly impressions, and oddities in spacing and relief. These weren't just curiosities. These were treasure. Certification services such as PCGS and NGC were eventually called in. Under magnification, the experts confirmed it, these coins were in a league of their own. Mint state 67. Mint state 68. For a coin meant for everyday use, these grades were nearly mythical. The odds of a circulated coin surviving in such pristine condition were slim to none. And then came the real shock. A 1990 20 pence graded MS-69, considered a virtually perfect strike, surfaced. It was an anomaly. A gem. A miracle preserved. Auction houses took notice. What began as a quiet discovery among collectors became a heated chase. As word spread, the few certified gems drew massive attention. In one unforgettable sale, amid a flurry of bidding from private collectors, numismatic dealers, and museum curators, one 1990 20 pence coin fetched a price no one had anticipated, $143,000. The room fell silent. A coin once worth just 1/5 of a pound had become a numismatic legend. Not because of its gold content, there was none. Not because of its age, only a few decades old. But because of its rarity, its condition, and the magical convergence of history, design, and sheer improbability that it was a wake-up call to the coin-collecting world. Value is not always born from metal or antiquity. Sometimes, it's born from perfection. From timing. From an invisible thread of fate that sets one object apart from all the rest. The headlines came and went, but within the quiet circles of serious numismatists, the conversation only intensified. The sale of that single, flawless 1990 20 pence coin for $143,000 wasn't just a record, it was a signal. A wake-up call to seasoned collectors, and a siren song to those still assembling modest piles of pocket change on their kitchen tables. All across the UK, and indeed, across the world, people were suddenly looking twice at their coins. What had once seemed ordinary had been transformed into an object of wonder, worth more than some cars, even homes. Collectors began to ask questions. How had such a coin survived unscathed? Was it ever meant to be released to the public? Could it have been part of a special presentation set? Was it simply forgotten in a vault somewhere, tucked away in pristine condition until fate placed it in the hands of someone who knew what they were looking at? Some believed it had been pulled from a sealed royal mint bag before the coins saw circulation, a fluke of timing and intuition. Others whispered more mysterious theories, an experimental strike, perhaps, or even a test coin that had somehow slipped through the cracks. Regardless of the origin story, the hunt was on. The numismatic world thrives on mystery, and every whisper of a high-grade 1990 20 pence set collectors ablaze with excitement. Coin fairs buzzed with speculation. Forums lit up with blurry photos and hopeful questions. Sellers began combing their inventories with renewed focus, scrutinizing every detail under magnification, but few found what they were looking for. Most 1990 20 pence coins bore the scars of circulation, small nicks along the edges, where on the Queen's cheek, faint flattening of the rose. The luster was dulled, the edges softened. The magic, gone. It became clear, the $143,000 coin wasn't just rare. It was a unicorn. Meanwhile, its legend spread beyond British borders. American collectors, long fascinated with UK coinage, especially pieces bearing Queen Elizabeth II's portrait, began to take note. The story had all the elements that captured attention: a modern coin with an astronomical value, a design steeped in heritage, and a riddle at its heart. In coin shows from London to Las Vegas, from Birmingham to Boston, the 1990 20 pence became a conversation starter. Dealers pinned it to their marketing. Collectors made it a centerpiece of display cases. Even casual hobbyists now held on to any 1990 20 pence coins they came across, just in case, and it wasn't just the coin's pristine versions that attracted interest. A subset of collectors began focusing on varieties and errors from that year. They looked for off-center strikes, die clashes, double dies, and planchet flaws, anything that could suggest a deviation from the standard and add value. Some even speculated about mule coins, those ultra-rare hybrids where mismatched dies accidentally create a coin never meant to exist. While no confirmed mule of the 1990 20 pence has surfaced, the possibility kept imaginations running wild. In a sense, the 20 pence coin had achieved what few modern coins ever do: it transcended its utility. It stopped being money and became something more. A time capsule. A treasure. A symbol. And for those who had once viewed it as an afterthought, a filler coin in daily transactions, it now stood as proof that value isn't always about what something costs. Sometimes, it's about what it means. The dawn of a new millennium brought with it an air of wonder, a blend of excitement and uncertainty. The year 2000 had finally arrived. Across the United Kingdom, fireworks lit the skies, cathedral bells rang into the cold night, and millions counted down with breathless anticipation as Big Ben struck midnight. It wasn't just the start of another year, it was the beginning of a new era. The digital age was now fully upon the world. But amid all the spectacle, amid the glow of computer monitors and the flicker of television screens broadcasting Y2K predictions and royal festivities, something far smaller, yet no less fascinating, quietly entered circulation: a coin. A single copper-plated steel penny, dated 2000, stamped with the profile of a monarch whose reign had now stretched across 5 decades. It was small, round, and largely unnoticeable. But in time, the 2000 UK 1 penny would become the subject of intense fascination, whispered about in collector circles, and ultimately, revered as a modern treasure. In most cases, the 1 penny coin is the humblest of currency. Light, common, and often left behind in drawers, purses, and the bottoms of pockets, the penny is the sort of coin people rarely think twice about. But what most overlook is that even these most modest denominations can harbor extraordinary stories. And in the case of the 2001 penny coin, that story is one of precision, scarcity, survival, and stunning collector value. The coin, as most in circulation today will remember, bore the image of Queen Elizabeth II on its obverse. By this time, the Queen had become a fixture on world coinage, her portrait recognized across continents, her profile evolving subtly over the decades to reflect her maturing reign. The year 2000 featured the fourth definitive effigy of Her Majesty, designed by Ian Rank Broadley. In this portrayal, the Queen's features are fuller, more aged, reflecting the dignity and strength of a monarch deep into her reign. Unlike the previous effigies, Rank Broadley's design brought a more realistic and less stylized approach, portraying the Queen not just as a royal figure, but as a real person, one whose image had become synonymous with British stability. On the reverse side was the familiar crown portcullis, an enduring symbol of Westminster and authority, designed by Christopher Ironside. This motif, unchanged since decimalization in 1971, had come to define the 1 penny coin. The portcullis, flanked by chains and surmounted by a regal crown, was more than just a nod to Parliament, it was a symbol of strength, governance, and continuity, encapsulated in copper-plated steel. Yet for a coin so standard in its function, the 2000 issue would come to be anything but ordinary. While millions were minted that year, as was typical for circulating pennies, it was the existence of a small number of anomalies and extraordinary condition coins that changed everything. These weren't ordinary coins that had clinked through vending machines or fallen between sofa cushions. These were pristine specimens, coins that had somehow escaped the wear and tear of daily life, preserved in uncirculated condition, and over time, became exceedingly rare. Collectors, always on the hunt for overlooked gems, began noticing something strange. While 2000 pennies were abundant in worn condition, locating one with sharp details, full luster, and no signs of handling was unusually difficult. It seemed as though the majority of the year's pennies had suffered immediately from circulation, struck quickly and in large quantities without the benefit of careful quality control. But then came the discovery of a few exceptional examples, coins that bore none of the weaknesses of their peers. Their surfaces gleamed with a reflective sheen, their details crisp, the Queen's crown sharply delineated, the chains of the portcullis perfectly intact. These weren't just nice coins. They were perfect. The first of these rarities to be submitted for professional grading caused a ripple in the collector world. When the coin returned from a major certification body with a grade of mint state 68, a near-perfect condition, it was a revelation. Suddenly, interest spiked. Collectors scoured their old rolls, dealers re-examined their inventory, and numismatists turned their focus to this most unexpected star of modern UK coinage, but the real shock came when one of these near-flawless 2001 penny coins went to auction. It wasn't a major event. Just a quiet lot in an online sale. Yet it sparked a bidding war that left even seasoned professionals stunned. The final hammer price, $113,000. A single penny, sold for more than many made in a year. And just like that, the legend of the 2000 UK 1 penny was born. The coin world, already used to surprises, now found itself riveted by a humble denomination. It was one thing when gold sovereigns or silver crowns fetched thousands at auction. But a penny? A coin worth just 1/100th of a pound, selling for more than a luxury car. That caught everyone's attention. And the questions poured in. How could such a thing happen? What made this coin different from the rest? The truth lay in a perfect storm of factors. First, there was the context. The year 2000 was a moment of historic transition. It wasn't just a change in the calendar, it marked a symbolic shift into the 21st century. Coins minted in that year were inherently appealing to collectors of milestone pieces. Anything bearing that 4-digit number felt a little more special, a little more significant. But that alone didn't explain the value. Next came the issue of condition. The Royal Mint, known for its high production standards, minted a large number of 1 pence coins in 2000. But most of them went straight into circulation. They were never packaged, never preserved, never protected from the daily bumps and bruises of life in people's pockets. In fact, many of the pennies from that year were part of bulk minting operations, fast, efficient, and focused on quantity. Precision wasn't sacrificed, but the possibility of perfection was rare. That made the emergence of a flawless example all the more miraculous. It was as though someone had reached back through time and plucked a coin straight from the minting press, before it could be touched, dropped, or smudged by human hands, and then there were whispers, quiet, speculative discussions that there may have been an early strike batch, perhaps from freshly polished dies, which produced superior detail and clarity. If true, it would mean that only a small number of coins carried those hallmarks of excellence, and the rest, millions of them, would forever fall short by comparison. This theory added a layer of intrigue, fueling a collector frenzy not just for the perfect 2000 penny, but also for information. Everyone wanted to know how these top-tier examples came to exist, and who might still have one tucked away, forgotten in a roll or sealed set. One of the more curious developments was how the coin bridged generations. Seasoned collectors began to recount their early collecting days, when they would sift through change as children, marveling at the different dates and mint marks. Suddenly, they were reliving those memories, with one new twist: they now had the chance to own something no one knew was special at the time. Younger collectors, energized by the coin's meteoric rise in value, began their own searches. They pored through old jars in their grandparents' homes, checked every copper coin that passed through their hands, and even began trading online. Some turned to car boot sales and flea markets, hoping to stumble upon a forgotten treasure. The effect rippled across collecting communities. Online forums exploded with discussion threads about the 2000 penny. Photos were uploaded, debated, analyzed. Was the strike strong? Was there anywhere? Could this be another MS-68 or higher? Grading agencies saw a spike in submissions. Some hopefuls were disappointed to receive low grades, but others struck gold, or, in this case, near-perfect copper-plated steel. Meanwhile, numismatic publications began to feature the coin prominently. Articles were written. Charts were drawn. Experts debated whether the $113,000 auction was a one-time anomaly or a sign of things to come. Some predicted the coin's value would plateau. Others believed the market was only just awakening to its full potential. After all, only a handful of high-grade examples had surfaced. If demand continued to rise and no new discoveries emerged, the coin's scarcity would only intensify. But even beyond value, the coin became symbolic. It was a reminder that beauty and significance aren't always found in grand things. Sometimes, they hide in plain sight, in the copper glint of a coin tossed onto a counter, or in the shimmer of a date few people notice. It reminded the world that collecting isn't just about wealth or prestige. It's about the stories we find in the smallest places. And the 2001 penny had a story that now echoed across continents. Collectors from abroad took notice too. In the United States, where penny collecting is a cherished tradition, the British 2000 penny began to show up on want lists. Australian collectors admired it as a piece of shared heritage. European numismatists praised its design and condition rarity. This tiny British coin had transcended its origin, becoming a global curiosity, an ambassador of sorts for modern UK coinage, and in all of this, the original coin, the one that sold for $113,000, remained elusive. Its owner, protective and discreet, kept it mostly out of the public eye. But its legend grew. It was spoken of in hushed tones at conventions, its image circulated like a piece of holy relic. For many, it represented a goal, not just a coin to own, but a dream to chase.